Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today, entitled Mom is Trying to Force Me to Change My Last Name. After that, Idiot Doesn't Know How to Use DoorDash. And after that, Neighbor Thinks I'm the Cleaner. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen has to change her last name. But I like Karen Reddit. I always thought it had a ring to it. So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Entitled Mom is Trying to Force Me to Change My Last Name. My mom got married recently, and she and her husband have decided to hyphenate their names and form one family name. Her husband's kids and my half-siblings are all on board with changing their names to the hyphenated version. I am not on board with this for me. I've expressed this at least 20 times since it first came up. I don't want my name changed, and I will not stand up in court and consent. My mom is so upset. She has tried talking me around, tried offering me bribes to go along with it. Her husband has asked me why I'm against it, and I have told him straight. I like my name as it is, and it's my tie to my dad, who passed 2 years ago, and I don't want anyone taking or adding anything onto it. My name has been my name for 15 years, and no, just because I'm a girl doesn't mean I'll change it when I get married. So that's not an argument to use with me. I also pointed out I could do the same when I'm older and get married and hyphenate, and I don't want 3 last names, and his name would be the one to go in that circumstance, not my dad's. Both are pretty upset I won't work with them on this and agree to compromise a change. My mom has told me I'm being stubborn for the sake of being stubborn, and having a family name that brings us all together is nice, and I'm separating myself from that. Her husband told me I'm making him feel like there's something wrong with him/his name. I told him that was a him problem, and I had made my feelings clear. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her mom? Please let us know. Definitely the mom. This is how to make your kids not want to have anything to do with you 101. Idiot doesn't know how to use DoorDash. Let's be real. DoorDash is a plague unto this world. Ridiculous service fees, abysmal customer service, bad practices, few protections for the workforce, and the gig economy in general is a parasite on the industry. Now that the end of lockdown is on the horizon, its necessity has diminishing demand and should be excised for all but the few desperate establishments. Come out and eat, everyone. We're almost there. End rant, onto the story. It's Memorial Day weekend, graduations are in full swing, and there's optimism in the air. We are slam-a-bama jammin', and there's a healthy wait list. Phone is non-stop ringing, and the annoying DoorDash bell tone won't stop blingin'. We're still running with a skeleton crew, and the bottleneck of a small kitchen means we're already hitting 1 hour plus wait times on our to-go orders right from the outset. The volume won't stop, so eventually we have to put a pause on DoorDash orders once we hit the 90-plus minute mark. One of the last orders that snuck in before we shut it down was for a modest number of dishes that the customer had opted to pick up instead of using delivery. Hey, saves us like 20% off exorbitant fees. We've got our hustle in full swing, and this guy shows up to the window soon thereafter and says he's here to pick up an order for, let's say Karen. We're a little confused since none of the ready bags have that name, and no upcoming orders are listed under Karen. One of the hosts pulls up the DoorDash tablet and points at the 20th order down on the list. Was it this order? As she gives off the items. Yes, he says excitedly. I guess you showed up quite a bit early. It's still got more than an hour till it's ready. What? The app said it would be ready in 30 minutes. Not sure how that happened. We set the timer on that one for an hour and a half. Oh no, my wife is gonna be very upset. All right, well, it's still gonna be about an hour. Sorry about that. He leaves in a huff. Back in the flow until someone shows up at our window again. She's got her arms crossed and hungry for a confrontation. Hello, I'm Karen. My husband just told me that our order is going to take over an hour. I remain stoic. Yup, it's behind about 20 other tickets. The app said it would be ready in 30 minutes. I'm not sure how that happened. When we confirmed the order, we set the wait time to an hour and a half. I pull up the tablet to show her that there's still 62 minutes left. Well, that's BS. I'm already here. So isn't there anything you can do to speed up the process? Unfortunately, no. There's already several tickets ahead of you, and we've got a full house of dine-in service. It's going to be about an hour. She continues stewing. Okay, I want to cancel my order. That's fine, I understand. I can pull your ticket off the line, but you're going to have to get in your DoorDash app to cancel it so that you don't get charged. She stares down at her phone and angrily paces back to her car. My coworkers and I are looking at each other like, what the heck? Not even a few minutes later, she's back at the window looking more livid. She holds her phone out and starts jabbing her finger against the DoorDash app. I can't log in. She starts handing it over to me like she wants me to do it. I step back. I can't do that for you. All I can do on my end is pull the ticket off the line. She tries one more desperate plea. I spent $70 here. Are you saying my money's no good? You can't make it faster? $70 is a weird flex when there's a few orders ahead of hers in the $200 to $300 range. I couldn't help but chuckle, which honestly is not the best customer service response. She points at me sternly and says, "You're a jerk," and wallows off. Guilty as charged, but also her problem, not mine. The entire staff and I are laughing about this because it's just so absurd. I give the owner a heads up and he laments. It feels like DoorDash brings us nothing but headaches. Don't you know it, brother? 5 minutes later, we get a phone call. It's Karen, and she's a lot more conciliatory. Hi, I'm calling about earlier. If we still want our food, how long is it going to take? I'm easygoing. I don't take crap, but I'm also in the business of trying to make people happy, so I don't take anything personal. The app now says 56 minutes. Let's see. We're still looking at roughly about an hour. What? I also hear her husband fully guffawing on speakerphone in their car. We were just there 15 minutes ago and you told us an hour. Is this some game where you just keep telling us an hour until you eventually close and never make our order? We want our cash back. I was fully on board with trying to help them out, but now I give no hoots. They asked to speak with a manager. I skip the line and ask the owner if he wants to share a piece of his mind. He gladly accepts. He's a super chill, easygoing guy, and after being on the phone for 15 minutes with them, I see new veins in his forehead. How'd it go? I ask. I was explaining things to them, and she told me to shut up and listen. No one talks to me like that. He gathers himself. Okay, forget DoorDash. We're deactivating the account. And like that, our prayers were answered. DoorDash may account for 20% of our business, but 90% of our headaches. Good riddance. Have you ever used DoorDash? And if so, did you like it? Please let us know. I prefer to go get my food myself. Neighbor thinks I'm the cleaner. So this happened Saturday morning. I live in a nice brand new apartment. It's great, and the few neighbors I've met have been pretty chill, with a few exceptions. Earlier in the week, some new neighbors moved into one of the apartments. Their movers left the front door open, and while they were moving furniture in, a whole bunch of dead leaves from outside blew into the hallway. It was a huge mess. My apartment is literally the first door once you enter the building, and every time I've come home since then, I've been walking on dead leaves. We do have the cleaners who come in about once or twice a week to clean the common areas, but Saturday morning, as I was cleaning my apartment, I decided to pop outside and sweep up some of the leaves. I decided to leave most of them for the cleaners and only focus on the ones that were between the entrance and my door, and a few leaves around there. Figured it's not my job to clean the whole place, and I'd just take care of the leaves that were bothering me. Well, one of my neighbors saw me sweeping up in my PJs with bedhead and decided I was one of the cleaners. She saw that I was tying up my garbage bag and folding up my broom and dustpan. They sort of fold together for compact storage. Crazy lady. Hey, you're not done. Why are you getting ready to leave? Me. Oh, hi. I am done. I was only sweeping the space between the hallway and my apartment. Well, that's just lazy. Do your job and sweep the rest of the hallway. It's been filthy for days. Me. Yeah, I know it's been filthy. That's why I decided to clean the spot between the front door and my door. You live here? So why do you only clean once or twice a week? If you live here, you should be cleaning every day. Stop being so lazy. Me. Ma'am, I'm not a cleaner, I'm a resident. The mess in the hallway bothered me, so I cleaned the part that was annoying me. If the rest of it bothers you, then clean it yourself. Karen. How dare you? I'm going to call body corporate and have you fired and thrown out of this building. Me. Ma'am, I own this apartment and I own my own business. I do not work for our apartment's body core organization, and I am not a cleaner. I live here. The mess bothered me, so I cleaned it. If the rest of the mess bothers you, then you clean it. I'm not your servant and not going to do it for you. Well then, why are you cleaning the hallway? You think I'm stupid? No one would clean the hallway unless they were getting paid, or unless they don't want to track dead leaves into their home every time they get back. Well, if you really are doing this on your own, you won't mind sweeping up the rest of the halls, so do it. Me. Yeah, no. Had you asked me politely, I might have considered it, but after this exchange, you can either do it yourself or wait for the cleaners to come do it. I'm gonna go back inside and continue cleaning my place. Nice meeting you though. I walked in and she started banging on my door for a while, but I just threw some Disturbed on my stereo and let David Draymond drown out her knocks. Didn't end well though. I went out later to throw away my trash in the dumpster downstairs. This crazy jerk, I suspect, didn't actually see her, but who else would do it, had swept all of the leaves in front of my door. So I grabbed my trusty broom and swept them all further down the hall to her door. Have a feeling we're gonna be playing this game until the cleaners show up. Maybe I'll borrow my buddy's leaf blower and just rev it up outside her door. It is pretty loud. Am I the jerk for not allowing my father-in-law to have a say in my baby's name? Me, 30, male, and my father have the same initials. We have the same last name, but different first and middle names. My wife's first name also starts with the same letter as mine. She took my name when we got married, so we have the same first and last initials. When we got pregnant with our oldest, 7, male, we followed the tradition of having the same initials as me as well as my dad. My son shares the same middle and last name, but has a different first name than myself and my father. We thought it was cute. When our second child was born, 4, female, we wanted to continue the tradition, but she has the same initials as my wife instead of me. My wife, 29, is currently pregnant with our last kid. This pregnancy has taken a large toll on my wife, so we've made the decision for me to get snipped once baby comes. My wife is her father's only kid. We have an okay relationship. He tries to butt in a lot when it comes to our parenting, but we shut him down pretty well. Anyways, once we found out my wife was pregnant, we picked one girl name and one boy name. If it's a boy, he will have the same initials as me and his brother. If it's a girl, she will have the same initials as her mother and sister. We have just learned it's a boy and have his name picked out. We shared our news a week ago. My wife was on a video call with her dad, updating him on everything and shared baby's name. He said that because this will be our last kid and his final grandkid, he thinks he should get a say in the name. My wife asked what he meant, and he said he would want the baby to be named after him or share a middle name. He even suggested doing something that honors his military career, like naming him after my father-in-law's favorite general. My wife said that while she understands his desire, we have already selected our son's name. We thought that was the end of it. We recently ran into a buddy of his, and he expressed how upset father-in-law was over not being included in our son's name. How our tradition was tacky, and how we can allow my father-in-law a say in one of the grandkids' names, or we should just have another one after this baby if we like our current name so much. We kinda just walked away, but my wife is furious, and honestly, so am I. I care for my father-in-law, but these are our kids. My wife is struggling enough with her current pregnancy. I called him and expressed it was kind of low of him to go around spreading our business or suggesting my wife keep popping kids out. If he wanted to name a kid so bad, he should go have another. He hung up and hasn't spoken to us since. So, am I the jerk? Edit. I want to thank everyone for the nice words. I appreciate all the concern for my wife and our new baby. I can see that I'm not the jerk for wanting to keep our tradition going, but I can see how my father-in-law may feel left out and how I should have definitely gone off on his friend instead of him. So I'll be phoning him in a few days and see how we can fix this. He's a great guy, father and grandfather, so I want him to feel welcomed in our family. Edit 2. I'm getting this a lot, but some people seem to think there's some big, long generational thing my side of the family did as far as initials. It's literally just my dad and I who have the same initials. We did this for our oldest because when he was born, my dad was passing. My wife requested we do this since he would not be around to see our son grow up. We continued it with our daughter because it would be weird for her to have a completely different name versus myself, my wife, and her brother, which is why we are doing this for our final kid. My dad has since passed. We are both no contact with our mothers, so my father-in-law is my kid's only grandparent. He certainly isn't being left out of their lives or anything. We aren't doing this as some grand forget you like many of you are suggesting. Final edit. Guys, please stop suggesting father-in-law get a dog or something. He's already got 2, Reginald and Turnip. He's already got a boat and a motorcycle too, so he doesn't need anything else to be named. And please stop suggesting he have another baby. My wife will be 30 in a couple of months, and I really don't think she wants to help raise our kid and her brother at the same time. Blockbuster scheduled me for 120 plus hours in the 2 weeks after I quit. This happened decades ago, and I'm not afraid to say it happened in a Blockbuster. I had a terribly uptight, power-hungry manager who refused to listen and hated me for standing up to her. She wrote me up because she didn't recognize you could reverse an order in the system. She wrote me up for a mistake another manager made, and she wrote me up for not coming to a 9 a.m. meeting after closing until 2 a.m. the night before. Anyway, the actual story. In the final year of high school, I put in my 2 weeks notice that my last day of work would be December 15th. I didn't want to handle the Christmas rush. I wanted to see my friends New Year's Eve, and also it was a terrible job. On December 15th, I go to drop off my uniform shirt and pick up my last paycheck. On my way out of the office area, I noticed the schedule. My name is scheduled to work 8 to 10 hours a day for most of Christmas break. The whole week preceding Christmas. Christmas Eve until 2 a.m., Christmas Day, the intervening week, New Year's Eve until 2 a.m., and New Year's Day. The following conversation ensued. Me: "Hey manager, you know I'm not working here anymore, right?" Manager: "If your name is on the schedule, you have to work. You know that." Me: "I don't work here anymore." "Your name wasn't in the holiday time off folder, so you got put on the schedule. Next time, request off earlier." Me: "I don't work here anymore." "If you're going to walk out on your shift, you're required to find someone to cover for you." At this point, a customer is eavesdropping while pretending to browse the recently returned but not yet shelved cart of movies. I address him. Me: "Excuse me, sir. Are you available to cover my shift on Christmas Eve?" Manager: "He doesn't work here." Me: "Neither do I." I wish I could say I threw my uniform shirt at her and everyone clapped, but she followed me to my car, yelling at me. She then called my parents on Christmas Eve and told my mother she failed to raise a worthwhile kid, and I had to file formal complaints. Bonus points. After that, she was put on leave, and the assistant manager had to cover New Year's Eve. Unfortunately, with all the drama about the general manager being too stupid to know that I had already quit, there was nobody else scheduled to work on New Year's Eve. Entitled Mom at a Campground expects me to have a shirt for her kid to tie-dye, throws world-class tantrum when I don't. So my boyfriend and I went camping this weekend at a campground, and we met this couple and their son, who was around 7, while we were setting up our tent, and they were setting up at the plot next to ours. We had some polite small talk, and we mentioned that we bought a tie-dye kit to tie-dye a couple of t-shirts while we were there. It was really just a small cheap tie-dye kit, and we both brought 2 shirts to make. The mother immediately got excited and said her son would love to do tie-dye with us later that night. We were caught off guard, but I was sure there'd be some extra dye, and I didn't really care that much, so I said sure. A few hours of hiking and fishing go by, and then we're ready to go back and settle into our campsite, eat dinner, and start making our t-shirts. We round the corner towards camp, and it was as if this kid was waiting for us. He was right at the path and then sprinted back to his campsite. Once we got closer, his mother stomped over to the trail, and this is how this conversation went. Entitled Mom: "Where have you guys been? We've waited hours." Me: We've been hiking, but he can come use it in a little bit once we set it up." I was totally caught off guard that she even approached me that way, but I blew it off again. Like, did this lady expect me to alter my plans all day to cater to her kid? We get to our campsite, and I'm about to start dinner, but this lady and her kid are just staring at us. So I decide to just get the dye ready so he can bring his stupid t-shirt over and leave us alone so we can eat in peace. I bring the tie-dye out, and they come over to our table, empty-handed. Entitled Mom: "Looks great. He's a small or a medium." Me: "What? I don't have anything for him to use. I thought you had your own t-shirt that you wanted to tie-dye." Entitled Mom: "No, you are the ones who brought the tie-dye kit. We waited all day for you to get back, and now you're saying that you don't even have a t-shirt for him?" Me: "I don't know what to tell you. We only have 4 t-shirts to make for ourselves." "I can't believe you told my son that he could tie-dye and got his hopes up. He waited for you all day. Can he have one of yours?" Me: "Absolutely not," I said while laughing. "It's not funny. Don't laugh at me." At that point, I'm just like, whatever lady, and we keep snickering at her until they storm back to their campsite, where she starts playing metal music full blast. It's hilarious. She was insane, throwing a full-blown tantrum and glaring at us from afar. An hour or so later, the ranger comes over to our tent and said he got a report that we were drinking. We were drinking, but they typically don't care unless we're disturbing other campers, and we were just two people sitting and eating dinner quietly. I told them what happened, and he thought it was hilarious, and I jokingly said that I'd like to make a counter-report about Entitled Mom's music. He was like, "Heck yeah, I'll do that," and went over to her. She threw a fit when he told her to turn that crap down, and I heard her screaming about how we're partying and drinking, and how dare he confront her and not us. Eventually, her husband turned her music off while she was mid-screech, then she sulked into her tent and never came back out, and the ranger came back over to our site for a beer after dark. We considered calling her poor husband over for a beer too, but decided not to poke the bear. You can absolutely wait to speak to the owner. Just found this sub and wanted to share my story from more than 20 years ago. I was attending grad school at the time to finish my doctoral degree, which I'm only mentioning as it's relevant because the customer made a crack about intelligence, while working at my father's business, an auto salvage yard. Our yard was located in New Jersey, and this event occurred in August, so it was hot and very humid. I was generally very dirty when I was at work, with grease and grime all over my arms and clothes. If you washed your hands and arms every time they looked dirty, your skin would just get dry and irritated. So with the exception of stopping to eat, I was absolutely filthy all day long. Our yard mostly dealt with shops and small independent mechanics who came in looking just as dirty as I was, so it was completely normal. Another point relative to this story is this. I look absolutely nothing like my father. He is 5'8" and weighs at most 140 pounds, and I'm 6'2". And back then I was powerlifting and weighed right around 220 pounds. So here's my story. A guy comes in to pick up something he bought when I was not there that had to be taken out of a car. I don't even remember what it was now, but it was something fairly heavy, for him, not for me, and dirty. If we had parts in our warehouse, they'd get scrubbed and cleaned by me before being labeled and cataloged, but parts coming right off a car just had the loose grime knocked off. So the guy comes in looking very out of place for our yard, wearing a button-down shirt, khakis, and dress shoes. He hands me his receipt, and I tell him I'll bring it out the side door. I walk out with his item on a hand truck, and the only vehicle I see parked is an Acura sedan, very unlike the beat-up shop vehicles most of our customers drove. The guy is walking around the front of his car talking on his phone, but the trunk is open, so I bring the hand truck around and leave his item on the ground with a piece of cardboard to keep his trunk clean and go back inside. A few minutes later, he comes inside wanting to know what he is supposed to do with the part, to which I facetiously reply, "Install it, I imagine." He wants to know why the part is dirty. I replied, "It's used." He wants to know how he is supposed to get it home. I reply, "In your car." He wants to know why I didn't put the item in his truck, and I point to the sign behind him, which admittedly is partially obscured by the open door, which says that we are not responsible for loading parts due to liability for possible damage to the customer's vehicle. He turns around, looking upset, and shouts, "What am I supposed to do now, genius?" Because I must be dumb if I'm dirty, right? There are now 2 other customers by the office, and I know them both well, so I tell them I'll be right with them and walk around outside to the guy's car because I just want him gone. I throw a blanket over the rear bumper of his car, remind him that I'm not liable for damage, and I lift the piece up and gently put it on the cardboard in his car. To do this without damaging anything, I had to put one of my hands on the side of the trunk, and I left a huge greasy handprint, largely on purpose. While I'm loading, he is standing so close to me, supervising, that my arm bumps his arm and his sleeve gets dirty. The entire time this exchange has been going on, he's been on his phone, and he's now ranting into his phone about our interaction, and he calls me genius again, and I reply, "You came to a salvage yard to pick up a heavy, dirty, used part and dress clothes with a luxury car. Who's the genius?" At that point, he also noticed the grease on his car and his dirty sleeve, and he wants to know if the owner is here, and I tell him Bob is working out in the yard. He demands to speak to him, and I say fine. We walk back around to the office, and I point to Bob, who is way out in the yard on his forklift moving cars that are going to the crusher. This is time sensitive because the truck will come to pick them up and block the entire street while we load, so we have to be ready. He starts to walk into the yard, and I try to stop him and tell him it's too dangerous. He keeps walking, so I point out that our Doberman is trotting along behind the forklift. She was actually our dog from home and very friendly, but we brought her with us every day because we couldn't get home to let her out. He sees the dog and stops, and I tell the guy he has to wait until Bob is finished moving vehicles, and it will be a while, which he says is fine, because he's going to tell Bob exactly how his customers are being treated. Over the next 40 minutes, I walk past the guy multiple times helping customers, and each time I pass him, he mutters something about being fired and me being sorry. Finally, the forklift shuts down, and Bob stands up, and my new friend seems ecstatic, banging on the counter and telling me that Bob is done and he wants to speak to him immediately. I walk outside with my new friend right next to me, climb up on a car's fender and wave my arms to get Bob's attention and scream, "Hey Dad, this guy wants to talk to you." And with that, my new buddy says, "Forget you," turns and walks out, hops in his car and guns it up the street. Fired? Are you sure? Okay. Note 1. This story was told to me by a friend and it's about her father. It takes place around 2005. Note 2. This happened in Sweden, where there's no at-will employment. Once an employee is past the initial 6-month probation period, you can't fire them without a cause, which also requires an established paper trail. So, my friend's father, who has since retired, was a mechanical engineer. He was around 55 when this happened and very experienced in his field. In fact, he had some skill sets that were so unique to the extent that you might be able to replicate them, but at extreme costs. We're talking multiple people from multiple companies, from multiple countries taking weeks, if not months, to get up to speed with specific projects to do the same things. He was a no BS kind of guy who did his job, did it well, but also pointed out problems and expected others to point out problems to him. He was extremely solution-oriented and had no time for office politics or keeping a positive attitude at work. Basically, your everyday grumpy old engineer who really knew his thing and was always ready to help if you asked, but not very forthcoming in team-building exercises and so on. He also ran his own business on the side, doing minor projects and so on. As was required by his employer, he had reported this and was sure to not cause any conflicts of interest, so his employer knew and accepted this. He was considered a valuable employee and got several awards that he cared little for. But anyway, during his many years with this employer, by all accounts, they paid him well, respected his knowledge, and accommodated his style, and he returned the favor by working very hard and making sure to mentor younger and newly employed engineers to make them effective coworkers. Then his firm was acquired by a larger firm and a new management team installed. Initially, everyone was promised that things would remain the same, but with the new management came a new office culture. The new management pressured for unpaid overtime, for a more American corporate culture with cheering and clapping and so on. He considered it extremely cringe and refused to participate. His status as a long-standing and knowledgeable employee kept him safe for some time before the new management realized that resistance to the new culture centered around him and started pressuring him to play along. When he did not, they turned increasingly hostile, realizing that he held a lot of soft power in the company, having mentored a large percentage of the engineers and resistance to their leadership centering around him. They started ordering him to work overtime. He answered that he was on time with his projects and that if they had identified an emergency requiring overtime, they would have to bring it up with the union to negotiate the overtime and make sure it was an actual emergency. The contract with the union said no overtime unless in an emergency. They tried to force him to participate in the cheering and clapping by making it mandatory for him to attend and yelling at him to participate. And he did, but so unenthusiastically that the event turned even more cringe and people started laughing. The workday turned more and more hostile, and he knew that things would come to a head sooner or later. Being an experienced engineer and knowing how to document things, he already had his ducks in a row. Then it finally happened. They caught him answering an email for his side business on his work laptop, brought him in, and fired him on the spot for theft of company resources. He sat at the conference table and looked the 3 managers in their eyes, one after the other, and asked, "Are you sure you want to do this?" They all said yes. "Are you really sure you want to do this?" He was escorted to his desk by security to leave his phone, his badge, and his computer at the desk, and then escorted out. Once out of the building, he phoned his union representative, who immediately canceled the firing, claiming there was no just cause, which meant that it would go to the labor board for arbitration. You see, the company had an IT policy that it was okay to use the company laptop for personal business, including a side business, as long as you were on a break and compliant with IT security protocols, and the company was aware of and had approved his side business. and he was on a break. Of course, he had his declaration of a side business signed by his former manager and the IT policy available and sent both to the union representative. Then he called his lawyer and asked him to send the pre-prepared cease and desist on 2 patents he had. Patents that were not that significant and nothing he could make any serious money out of since they were mostly for very specific things used by the solutions he designed and used at his employers, but still his that he had brought with him into the employment and allowed the employer to use in exchange for a slightly higher pay. All duly documented in his contract, of course. Then he went home for some vacation and tending his side business. He was always a man to prepare and had enough money saved up to last him a good time, to the extent that he considered retiring entirely. My friend said he had 2 job offers from competitors that had looked to snipe him for some time within the week, basically as soon as they learned he was available. He was gracious but declined, but offered them to consult with his side business now that he had the time, which they eagerly accepted, at twice the hourly rate that he made at his earlier employers. His colleagues started ringing the day after for advice, since the projects he had managed could not go on without him. He was perfectly polite, but denied any information and help, saying he had left everything he had with management and to contact them, as he was no longer employed there. Several clients that phoned his private number were told the same thing. Since his private number was not on a public registry, he suspected that both colleagues and clients spent some time and/or money to find it. It took 2 weeks before a manager phoned him and asked things. He politely declined to answer, got yelled at, and replied with something like, "I'm sorry, you must have mistaken me for someone who works for you," and hung up. This happened a few times, and the next week HR phoned him and stated the firing had been a mistake and he was welcome back to his job. He again politely declined, saying that he awaited the labor board's decision, but until then he was happy to consult for them at 6 times his hourly pay, after taxes and administrative costs, of course. After a few days of wrangling and trying to negotiate, they had to accept, and then he sprung the patent issues on them, forcing them to pay for those too. Less than 2.5 weeks after being fired, he was back at his desk. After roughly 3 months, the firing came to the labor board. The employer stated that they believed they had handled the issue correctly, but were still willing to offer my friend's father his position back, in the interest of goodwill and a reconciliation. My friend's father and the union simply stated that he was now employed elsewhere, his own company, and no longer available. The labor board ruled in his and the union's favor, and he got the normal damages, 3 months pay damage and 24 months pay severance package, including pension and of course the lawyer costs of the union paid by the employer. According to my friend, her father continued to work there until he retired, working 20 hours or so per week and 10 to 15 hours for other companies, making a pretty penny, continuing to charge them 3 times what he charged their competitors as a jerk tax. The managers were not fired, but they were moved into their own group apart from the rest of the department when it came to bonus calculations, and the costs of her father's consultancy fees and the costs of the labor board arbitration were budgeted there, meaning they were constantly over budget and thus ineligible for bonuses for several years, which was a decent percentage of the incentives at that company, making at least one of them quit. My friend also said her father usually met any management complaints with a big crap-eating grin and, "What are you gonna do? Fire me?" after that.
Cute Baby Turtle said to come watch this video next because you're gonna love it. And please support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a special shout out in our next video. And to have us make a video for you, head over to our Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.